I'm Bruce Martin.
And I would be Roger.
You're closer. He keeps doing that.
All right.
Stop it. We don't need to do this every
right.
time.
Every podcast. No,
doesn't need to be part of our ongoing shtick. Hey, how are you doing today?
I am doing great.
I heard you wanted to talk about church signs. Roger, he just came in and said, we need to talk about church signs today. That sounded amusing to me right off the bat.
So I'm driving down a rural road, minding my own business today.
Okay.
And so as I drive by a church, and I just happen to notice, the marquee thing where you can put up your own lettering, and somebody does that. And so the sign read, because Jesus and germs are everywhere.
I have no response to that.
So
I feel like you just effectively ended the podcast with that.
So,
because Jesus and germs are everywhere.
Listen, here's my take on that. I look and say, there's no clearer sign that your church secretary needs education.
Well, that's true.
And that my own theory is, honestly, I think it was a cry for help.
Okay.
And there's this, she's, if you guys don't give me a raise, I'm going to put more signs like that.
We're going to keep putting signs up.
Oh, I've got more I can come up with.
I remember driving through a city, a rural county in North Carolina, and I saw a sign, and it was in the middle of the summer, and it said, "You think it's hot here?" And then it showed this picture of flaming hell below it. So I can imagine a church sign right now. You think COVID's bad? Try hell, buddy. Okay.
When were church signs ever a good idea? I don't know. In my mind, I'm picturing there's this moment someone says, well, what if our church had a marquee sign? And in my mind, I see the angels. No, don't do it.
Don't do it.
There's going to be so much damage to the kingdom.
I always thought it was helpful when they showed worship at 9:40, Sunday school at 9:45, worship at 11, and then Wednesday night prayer at 6 p.m. I thought that was a helpful sign.
And the pastor's name.
And the pastor's name.
Yeah. Which was usually front and center at the top.
Well, yeah, you don't want to think that some kind of heretic is leading. Of course, no one knows the guy, so I don't know why that's particularly helpful.
So, yeah, so that was, I just need to get that off church signs.
Because Jesus and germs are everywhere. I saw the greatest.
Who's the audience there?
This is a shout out to Mark Sandberg in Lavia, but someone from his Communitas church put out this video that was hilarious. And it asked the question, you guys got to look this up, it's great. Which Zoom meeting person are you? And it shows the extrovert. There's no sound effects, but she's like, and then it shows the introvert. And then it had a little subtitle that said, the person that's taking COVID-19 too seriously. They had the little rhinoceros mask on. It was great. Anyway, it's quite funny. That's Mark Sandberg.
Really not trying to laugh at anyone who's taking COVID seriously, right?
No, but it was just the full gas mask effect that made me. It was actually quite clever. So that was good.
So yeah, I needed to get that off. I know there are other deeply important things, although that may be the deepest thing we talk about. Just stop using the signs. Like if you have a marquee sign, just put on there, no longer in service. We're not using these anymore.
No longer in service. I see what you did there. Because they can't go to services, right?
I can't.
No. Okay. I think Roger's onto something. It might be that church signs are actually no good for anything. Really?
Yeah. It could be an overreaction, but I'm just trying to see any place where that has really taken someone closer to Jesus. And I've seen plenty that are moving them the other way.
Yeah. So, Roger, do you think we should tell our listeners how my week started, my Sunday?
Well, if we want them all to be in the slow of despond.
Yeah. Well, it didn't start at church. I can tell you that. It finished at a hospital. All right. I've got a new way of evaluating like these Born to Be Wild trips that I take. A good trip from a bad trip. All right.
Where everyone lives.
That sounded like someone rating a drug. A drug interaction. Yes. It's a good trip and a bad trip.
Take a drag on my
So
brain.
A good trip, no one dies. But also on a good trip, you don't finish the trip following an ambulance to the hospital on Sunday afternoon.
I saw that going differently in my mind.
Also hitch. So I just learned, I should be extremely happy when I finish any, and I've done hundreds of these now, but any wilderness trip that doesn't end with me following an ambulance to the hospital, that's good. By the way, the young man is fine. Everything's good. Just a little heat exhaustion and whatnot. But for me, it was a very scary moment. $1,000. on to bigger and better things. Other than that, I've had a great week this week. It's good. And I'm glad to be back with you, Raj, for episode 5 of Inglorious Pastords.
Okay, so
sponsored by.
Wait. Are we supposed? When are we supposed to do the sponsorship?
We have to do something at the beginning.
At the beginning. Did we wait too late?
And at the end, this is still the beginning.
Okay.
No, we're still in the first 6 minutes. Oh, we've still got 13 seconds before it's too late.
Okay.
So
tell us real quickly.
Rob Abercrombie team with Keller Williams.
Once
again, sponsoring Inglorious Pastords, as far as they know.
We're so proud of you,
yes.
And thank you for your support.
Your sponsorship. And Roger is setting it up where if others of you want to be patrons of the podcast, you can do that at our anchor page. That's all. Is that all ready to go yet, Raj?
No, because that's the first I've heard about it.
By the time you hear this on July 1st or so, anytime after July 1st, Roger will probably have that ready to go. Because I know a lot of you individuals want to also sponsor the podcast. Maybe you don't have a huge company like Rob does, but you could throw, I don't know, $1 or $2 this way. That'd be great. Super. Thanks for taking care of that, Raj.
Yes. Happy to help.
Okay. So what did you want to talk about today?
Well, now here's a question.
It's not about church signs, is it?
Thought we could talk about Jesus.
Jesus on church signs.
Because Jesus and germs are
everywhere. That's going to be, that's going to make the title. That is going to be the title of episode 5, because Jesus and germs are everywhere.
I'm just thinking, what ray of hope is there? I mean, this is...
Well, what gets me is the way that it was grammatically interposed. If you just said Jesus and germs are everywhere, that's a standalone. But if you say, because Jesus and germs are everywhere, I'm like, because why?
Well, maybe there was something I missed earlier.
I know.
Which scares me even more.
Well, it could be the sign from the week before.
I don't know.
And so it was a carryover. I didn't. Churches might do that. The sign this week is, wait for it, because next week, and you just leave them hanging out there.
Yeah.
Because Jesus and germs are everywhere.
Stop using church signs.
Okay, I think we've made that clear.
The disciples of Jesus, there were 12. Well, there were actually many of them, but there's the 12 that we know.
There were 12 disciples. Jesus called to help him. Simon, Peter,
I wish you wouldn't do that.
James, his brother John. This is
Matthew,
James the son of Alphaeus, that is Simon, Judas, and Bartholomew. You have to understand, in our church world we grew up, we learned a ditty for just about everything. So we could do the books of the Bible, Genesis through Revelation. I can say all 66 to this day, which is fascinating to me.
Don't sing that song.
No, I'm not. But that song just came to me for the first time in like 50 years. So
you don't have to sing every song when it comes to you.
Okay, so Jesus had lots of disciples, 12 that he designated as apostles.
So fun question. I mean, do you have a favorite? I mean, of the disciples, is there
Judas? What kind of question is that? Do I have a favorite? Well, I know who not to say.
Well, that's absolutely right.
I'm talking about the other Judas.
No, I have thought about that. Right. Judas, we realize no one says, well, that's, that.
What did you name your first son? Judas.
In all fairness to Judas, though, I mean, like, no one's calling their kid Thaddeus either.
Well, that's true. Or Benedict Arnold, for that matter. So.
No.
Thaddeus. There are Thads out there.
I understand.
Okay.
But Thaddeus as a...
That's a lot. Right. That's a lot.
We're going to stop mocking Thaddeus's. I apologize. Modding or mocking.
So I have a favorite. The one that I relate most to is Peter, because he's partly brilliant and partly an idiot.
No.
And that's the world I live in.
No. And Peter is that one that I'm most drawn to. He talks too much, says the guy speaking on a podcast. He talks too much. He knows too much. but he's just he's quirky and
he is the human condition.
And he's screwing up all the time.
Yeah.
And
oh,
that's probably the point where I most connect with him but at the same time, he does love Jesus.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he just that moment. Well, you know that I love you, Jesus. He's just he's and actually that's an interesting story.
Yes.
Because this is something I noticed this week. And again, I laugh about how you read the Bible far more than I do, and this will be an example of that. I realized it hadn't dawned on me. Now, listen, I'm 58 years old. I've been a pastor. I'm not sure I had remembered that there were actually 2 miraculous catch of fish stories.
Yeah, I did a message on this years ago called Deja Vu.
So, see, this is why Bruce is.
That's why I'm on the podcast, frankly.
The theological backbone of Inglorious Pastords.
Oh, that's great. Our family is going to love that.
He's the glorious. I'm the third.
Yeah, that's well.
You did a message on that?
Yeah, it's called Deja Vu.
Oh.
And it was called Deja Vu because, and this is so some good news for today.
Okay.
Our SGN moment is no matter how bad you screw up, it's never too late. So that and by the way, I'm thoroughly enjoying watching The Chosen right now because it does such a great depiction of that moment where they have this catch of fish.
Yes.
They've been fishing all night. We found out that Peter is connected with these really shady characters, and he either catches a ton that night or
he's in serious
trouble. He's getting arrested. He might even be killed by the Romans. Whatever. But it brings context to that moment where Jesus says, put the net down over on this side, and he's like, and I can imagine Peter, he's trying to be somewhat nice because he recognizes that Jesus is a rabbi, and he's like, well, we've been fishing all night, Mr. Rabbi.
We lifetime fishermen who've been on this sea for years, and the carpenter is going to tell us about fishing.
The carpenter teacher is going to tell us. But it's interesting. But he has this moment where because Jesus had sat on his boat to teach. So Peter is listening to the teaching. There's something about the teaching. This happened over and over again when people would hear Jesus teach for the first time. It said they were amazed at his teaching because he taught with authority. So Peter,
something's different.
Yeah, Peter picks up on that authority this is my take on it. And he's like, because he says he has a turn. He said, we've been fishing all night, and you can tell he's ready to go. We're done here.
Right.
But he goes, but since you say so, if you say so, and it's almost like he's deferring to, I appreciate the teaching you just did. We're going to respect the rabbi. Out of respect, we're going to do it. Nothing's going to happen.
Right. We don't want to embarrass you, but you've asked us to.
This will be a good lesson for the carpenter to stay to carpentry in this moment.
And so there's this thing that happens in that first. So this one we're talking about. So this is early on. Apparently Peter has met Jesus. He knows, but there's it's very early in the relationship. And so I wonder if we haven't caught all night. There's this sense of and I wonder how unusual that might have been. We've caught 0.
Yeah.
So really this moment, for fishermen, this is a failure. You're not feeling good about your fishing chops right now. This is not your best moment. Right. So then there's this huge catch. I mean, so it's obviously
2 boatloads.
Right. It's miraculous.
Yeah.
They've never seen this before. This is like a blind person being healed. This is not possible.
Right.
So he has that moment. And this is one of those places I relate to Peter so much. This just hits. He says, depart, get away from me. Depart from me. And when I was reading that this week, so I did that. I said, I've felt that with Jesus, where I've just
go away from me. I'm a sinful man.
Yeah, I'm not worthy. I'm not. And honestly, I've sometimes had this with people. Just a moment where I'm feeling so bad about myself. Just I'm going to get. I'm not worth anything. to me, there's just this very, very powerful moment. There's the fishing failure, but what he's dealing with here now is, I think, whatever that thing in him that he's feeling a failure about, morally, spiritually, I don't make the cut. I'm not the kind of person I ought to be.
Because you're making me think about this in a new frame. So he recognizes, as a seasoned fisherman, this is a miracle. Now think of God just intervened in my life in a profound way, and he was struck with, I don't deserve that. I'm not worthy of that. Because at this point, Jesus hadn't said, I want you to come with me.
No,
he
right.
just experienced this miracle. God, imagine that. I mean, God, in that moment that God has profoundly intersected your life, and you're struck with, I'm kind of the last person God ought to be like helping, because I'm a mess.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where it's almost like, it's scary. You're making a mistake. I need to, the comedy, I've got to fill you in. I'm not who you think I am.
Well, and that's interesting, because what Jesus said right after that was, don't be afraid. His first words after Peter says, go away from him, a sinful man, are, don't be afraid. Now, what's that about? What fear is he feeling in this moment about, hey, I'm not the guy that you think I am?
But is it the fear that so many of us have? If people knew me, they would depart from me. In other words, if people knew, people knew, and I've thought this, listen, Inglorious, Pastords, we can have fun with that. But if people knew everything about me, I think a lot of them would say, depart from me, get away. So on the other end, I feel that at moments. I feel that with people sometimes, feel that at moments with God. And he says, yeah, get away from me.
It makes me think about something I read recently that I've given a lot of thought to now. But this one person that I was reading said, every person has a public life, a private life, and a secret life. And I thought, that's an interesting distinction to make, because we think of public life, what everyone sees. And then private life is a little more maybe what my family sees, or people that are closest to me see. But he talked about having a secret life. And for me, it's often the secret life that makes me feel those feelings more than anything else. Because I know what's going on in my head, or I know what's going on at a certain level in my heart. And I'm like, that's the wrong thing to think. That's the wrong thing to process. That's the wrong thing to do. And that's when I'm most inclined to have those moments. God, just my secret life. Depart from me, because I'm a mess.
The secret life is that place that I maybe have talked to no one about.
Yes.
And just a candid moment, even when I think about Raj and Bruce as brothers, probably the first person I ended up going to talk to, I think about that secret life was you. There's this moment, and it was life-saving. We need somebody, and I think that's the beauty here. Jesus already knows his secret life, and he says, don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid. Oh,
now,
that's rich.
So what's fascinating to me now, because you've already done a sermon on this, so,
I'm not going to sermonize. I'm going to let Roger, we're going to let Roger come along slowly to where he's reached this place. Deja vu.
So the deja vu. So now, you fast forward 3 years. So Jesus says,
hang on, no fast forward. Don't go past what he said after don't be afraid.
Okay, do that, because that's okay.
That's an important part to what I think is coming at the end. He says, don't be afraid. Follow me from now on. And that, to me, that's the important 3 words.
Yes.
From now on, you'll be a fisher of men. I'm going to make you a fisher of men. In other words, instead of catching tons of fish, you're going to catch tons of people for my kingdom's sake. And I've loved that passage where it says, Jesus says, from now on, you will, because that's important. Fast forward 3 years later, apparently from now on means from now on.
But before we go there too, so I'll stop again, because is the thing that I love is, so Peter says, depart from me. If you knew, you would. And when he says, from now on, you're going to be fish for men, it's Jesus saying, No, I know. I want you on my team.
Oh,
You're saying depart. No, I want you on my team. I want you. And so it says follow. And of course, from a rabbi, and I'd read this part where even usually people would come to the rabbi, they would choose a rabbi, they would go, but here is the rabbi, the miracle working rabbi who says, I want you on my team.
and I wonder, I don't know, I wonder if there's a humility to that the other rabbis didn't express. In other words, you've got to come to me.
Jesus was probably more humble than the other rabbis.
Well, yeah, but just think about that. You've got to come to me, and then I'll decide whether you make the cut or not. You've got to come to me and ask, can I be on your team? And then I'll let you know. And yet Jesus, knowing that he's a mess, knowing he's a sinful man, says, I love the way you put that. I want you on my team. I can't imagine what Peter feels in that moment. Not only is Jesus not going to depart from him, but he says, you're coming with me. Wherever I'm going, you're coming with me.
You're coming with me, and there's work for you to do.
Yeah.
You have a lane. You have a role. Whatever you think about your life.
Yeah.
I'm just a screw-up fisherman. Jesus sees something different in him and speaks into that and calls to him. So I'll fast forward now, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay, good. So now we're at 3 years now. So an amazing 3 years, all the teaching of Jesus, whatever. But we've gotten here in the late stretch. The authorities want to kill Jesus, and there's a kind of a bounty out on him, and we know Judas betrayed whatever, and everything starts getting squirrely, and Jesus starts talking about dying, and then the authorities come in. Peter tries to be a hero. Jesus says, put away the sword. They take away Jesus in the night. And there's that little thing about Jesus told Peter, well, I appreciate your support, but you're going to deny me 3 times. And sure enough, that's exactly what happens. Is gets around a fire, and you know that Nazarene, that oh no, I don't, and then these the denial, so I remember then tears. So Peter went and wept bitterly. This broke him. That moment broke, and so even when
you're right, because up to that point, it was saying, hey, I'll go with you to prison and death.
Oh, absolutely right.
I mean, still very confident, and here's the thing, even I've always thought about him swinging the sword. I think in that moment, Peter's like, I'll prove to Jesus that I'll go down swinging. I'll go down fighting. Because what man doesn't want to go down fighting? But what he didn't understand was when Jesus heals Malchus and then says, put the sword away.
Put the sword away.
My kingdom's not about that. I think Peter's in this incredible place of almost disillusionment because Jesus, I've just tried to show you that I'm going to die. I'm going to be willing to die for you, because Peter can't take out a Roman guard, and that's just not going to happen. But he's showing he's willing to die for him, but he wasn't willing to go like a lamb to the slaughter. So he watches Jesus being led away like a lamb to the slaughter and mocked and ridiculed. Yeah. In other words, it's one thing for men to swing the sword and we're going to fight and just going to be, but it's a different thing to be led away, which goes into the later narrative where Jesus talks about someone's going to lead you to a place that you don't want to go. So I think from that place of a little bit of disillusionment, I tried to fight for Jesus. He wouldn't let me. And someone says, hey, are you with him? And he's like, no.
I don't even know anymore.
I don't even. Right. And then I thought, even, when you look at Judas and you look at Peter, Judas betrays Jesus so that he's arrested, but apparently didn't think that they were going to kill him. I mean, because it said when he saw that they were going to kill Jesus, he was filled with remorse. I don't think he thought they were going to do that. But then I thought about, which is worse? Your friend that gets you arrested, or the friend that says, I don't even know you after you're arrested. Yeah. I've never seen the guy. Both are just brutal to the friendship, obviously. Yeah. Both are betrayals.
So then Jesus comes back to life, and this is a ray of hope in many ways, but Peter, you can just tell, is still this broken guy. So you're reading, so we get to John 21, we're getting to the deja vu. And in John 21, I'm just going to go out fishing with the guys. And there are more than a few people who felt like this is, you know what, that 3 years was a nice dream, but I've only always been a screw-up fisherman, and I'm going to go back to that. So he's out on the sea. and they fish all night and don't catch one fish. And as the sunlight is just starting to peek up over the lake, there's a shadowy figure on the shore who says, maybe you guys want to throw the net on the other side. And they, of course, this is that there's so many fish.
153.
Again, there's this, but Peter's response is different this time. Do you remember what he does?
Well, he jumps in the water and goes to land, and
who's on land?
Jesus.
He goes toward Jesus. This is
Yeah.
just interesting. So the first,
Yeah.
I'll bet this wasn't in your sermon years ago. No, but so the first time he says, "Depart from me."
Yeah.
The second time, the exact same thing happens, and he goes
And he runs to him. I mean,
toward Jesus.
and he doesn't even wait for the boat to get there. It says it's
No.
100 yards off, so they could obviously row to get to shore. He wants to be there somehow. At first, it's almost like he's leading the way for all of them.
No, but what's striking to me, because I'm trying to put myself,
Yep.
I'm thinking in that moment, I don't want to look Jesus in the eye. I'm thinking but he has walked with Jesus. And there is something, he's learned something in those 3 years about the God who doesn't want to depart from me, the God who wants to be. And Jesus says to him, "Oh, go back, get some fish. I've got a fire going here. I want to cook some of that fish I just helped you catch."
Thus the deja vu, in case y'all were wondering. Because when I teach this, Roger,
it's beautiful.
it's very powerful. But I think for Peter, there was this moment. All right, so it is his calling, what we call his calling, when Jesus first said, "Come and follow me," there was this miraculous catch of fish. That's something that's going to be emotionally branded. I mean, you're never going to forget that moment. So Peter blows it royally, just the night that Jesus goes to the cross, he's like, I don't even know him. I completely disavows him. Then he's weeping bitterly, might even be thinking, Jesus is done with me.
Yes.
Jesus was the real thing.
Right.
I messed this whole thing up.
Right.
And so then he has this miraculous catch of fish, which is a deja vu. I believe it reminded him of his calling. And I think what Jesus was doing in that moment was saying, Peter, nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. When I said from now on, I meant from now on. What I hadn't thought about was that beautiful thing you just said. In that moment, he knew something about Jesus that he didn't know the first time. And he ran to him.
And so,
because I would have been tempted to say, "Go away from me, I'm a sinful man."
No, that's where I'm thinking I would have, but then he had walked with Jesus. There's something you got to know. You were walking, and you walked how many times Jesus moved towards screw ups. And there's Zacchaeus, and there's the woman at the well of Samaria, and there's Simon the Pharisee, and you just and all of Matthew's tax collector friends. And Matthew, we wanted him on the team. If ever there was a screw up.
Because it said going from there, he saw Matthew at a tax collecting booth. Hey, that's the guy I want on my team.
So I think he has learned something about
that's a good word.
The heart of God, heart of Jesus for screw ups. But what you just said, so the first time the word was, "I'm going to make you a fisher." Right? You're going to fish. I want you on my team. And so then they get around this fire, and Jesus says, "Hey, Peter, do you love me?" And again, this is where Peter could have said, "Well, it's why I ran out of the boat toward you. I love you." And then the words, and these are they're more precious than "I'm going to make you a fisherman." He said, "Feed my sheep." And it's just what you were saying is, "Oh, I still want you on the team. Oh, you still have a calling. I want to be very clear. You're not a screw up fisherman. And the last thing you need to be doing now is just going back to no. I still have work for you. I still want to be with you." And he lets we can talk about putting Peter on the spot, but he lets Peter say 3 times in front of a group of men, I love you. I love you. I love you. And I guess that's that point of kinship I feel with Peter, because I have these moments. I do love Jesus. And I guess growing up, you think we grew up in, our dad was a pastor. And so when we were talking about Jesus since, 6 months, it was probably the first word we said, whatever. So, we grew up with that. But I know one of the little ideas that kind of crept in church world, as I remember growing up, was, okay, you could be all kind of a screw up before Jesus changed you and you trust him, whatever.
Yep.
But then there was this odd idea, if you screw up afterward, right, now it's on you, right? Whatever you were before, God cleaned that up. But then afterward, that's a different kind of thing. And I think Jesus is saying this word to a guy who'd been walking with him 3 years. And by the way, Peter had other screw ups.
Yeah.
And by the way, after this, Peter has more screw ups.
Right.
There's some racism issues. There's other kinds of things that are going on. But I think there's this powerful message. Whatever you've done before you knew me and after you've known me, I still want to be with you.
I still want you on the team.
I still want you on my team.
I love that.
And just so the putting those two, and again, how you even had that, seeing those at some point and making a message, a word out of that. Me, a latecomer to the party, just sort of seeing that sort of for the first time. Gosh, I hope I didn't hear that sermon you preached and I've just totally forgotten it. But
that's probably so. Yeah, you were probably doodling or something at the time. Bruce is up there sharing some drivel.
You may learn if you watch, listen this podcast, vlogcast, whatever. Again, I've got memory issues, and we laugh about it. But
I've told Roger many insightful things over the years that he's forgotten somehow. I don't understand that.
So, yeah. So that was sort of the Jesus story that's been hitting me this week. And
I needed to hear that. Even this week, because when I know my own world, and sometimes I know what goes on in my heart, and I know what goes on in my secret life, or even in my secret thoughts, and I'll have that moment with God, a little bit like just depart from me.
Whatever the words am I going to use? That's right. Really
depart from me. Peter said it best.
Right, depart's not a word we use a whole lot, but
it's true. Depart from me. Actually, we grew up in a world where everyone talked King James.
Right.
Depart from me, though. It was great. But I've had that moment even this week at times. I'm just a mess. Because I know what goes on in my mind and in my heart sometimes. And I'm like, it's so broken. It's just, and yet to hear Jesus going, nope, I want you on the team. I know you love me, Bruce. And I know you would proclaim it like Peter did 3 different times. And I'd probably like Peter, I'd be a little sad the 3rd time out because I'm like, but there's a couple things about that story. I just want to ask you, because Roger's really the resident theologian. I read a lot of the Bible, okay? Roger studies the Bible. Okay, that's a different. He's the theologian.
Oh, good gosh!
No, but there's 2 interesting questions. That one is
I won't be able to answer either of these.
In the 3 times that Jesus asks him, there's different words for love that's used there, as I recall. The first 2 times it's phileo, an affection for. Do you love me?
You're talking about the Greek words, okay?
The Greek word.
Yeah.
Oh, Greek words. Yes, that's what.
Ooh.
But
I did take Greek in seminary.
But Peter, Jesus
I'm
said,
a little taller now.
He said, Peter, do you truly love me more than these? And I've always thought, is he talking about the fish or the other guys? In other words, because at the previous time, was it Matthew 18 or wherever it was that Peter said, even if all these guys depart from you, I'm going to be right there. So I almost see a little bit of a smile on Jesus' face. Hey, Peter, do you really love me more than these guys? And Peter's like, well, yeah, I love you. And I don't know. Or I've heard one preacher say, do you love me more than fishing? Because it was like, do you love me and my kingdom and that pursuit more than this world of fishing that So what do you think it is?
Well, the Greek language there.
Yes, this is going to be great.
There's an antecedent from the noun these that
is
would
that
refer.
Like an aardvark? An antecedent.
No, that's called Greek BS, and which is one of the reasons you can use Greek, because if people don't know the language, you can
It's true.
actually make it say things it doesn't say.
That's why sometimes I talk in King James. That way no one can actually refute what I'm saying because they're not sure what I said.
I think one of the beauties of the Bible, and I think this happens a number of times.
Did you answer the question?
I'm answering the question.
Oh,
if you'll
sorry.
Let me, if I'm,
Okay.
That's where I'm getting.
I just want to make sure Roger wasn't getting off topic here.
No, I think it's intentionally vague because so you can fill in the blank.
Oh.
Where I'm going with this. So even
That's
like
good.
when the Apostle Paul says, it talks about this thorn in the flesh.
Yep.
I asked God to remove it, but he wouldn't do it. He said, my grace is sufficient for you. Well, we all want to know what the thorn is. And I think the beauty of God not telling us what the thorn is, we can fill in the blank. This thing we've asked God
Whatever
to
the
take
messenger
away.
of Satan is that torments us, then you're exact, and that is beautiful.
And when I look at these,
Mm.
it's really, you can fill anything in that blank. These, do you love me? Because there is the moment you talked about where he in an unguarded, it just
classic Peter
if
moment.
all these other people, if all these others desert you, I won't. And gosh, I could have said something so dumb.
The underlying tone being, if all these other clowns desert you, I'll write.
Right.
I'll go with you to prison.
If everyone, and it was such a Peterish, beautiful. I think it was more a statement of love, but pride gets in there as well, and whatever. And Jesus gives that moment. But I think any one of us can fill in. Do you love me more than these? Do you love me more than this? Do you love?
Right.
Even for me, then, do you love me more than what your own self-image, what you think about yourself? Are you going to let me use you on the team regardless of how messed up you are, regardless? Because here's the thing, and I've had the moments, I have that depart from me, and what I'm really saying is Jesus calling wants to be with me, and there's a point where that can be, I know better, and I'm not worth anything. Well, it's its own kind of
pride.
Yeah, it's become about me. And so the part of it is, if you love me, you do what I say. So I'm saying, I want you to feed my sheep, because that was an instruction.
Right.
That wasn't an invitation. It wasn't simply feed my sheep, take care of my lambs.
Yep.
You don't get to decide whether you're too big a failure to feed my sheep, to care. And we've felt the weight of that as pastors at some point. And now as I look back, oh my goodness, to ever be a pastor, a church, a teacher, stand up and say, thus saith the Lord in some way, when as many things as I've gotten wrong or whatever. But what a beautiful thing. And I say the reality that Jesus wants me on his team, and it's not of how good, how well I'm doing, how few times I messed up this week, how shameful I've been. It's never been based on that. And this is what I love about, because in both those pictures, there's failure. The seasoned fisherman can't even get fishing right. And Jesus' miraculous catch of fish is, what I'm going to do through your life has nothing to do with how bad a failure you are. It's not about you. This depart from me can be, oh, you have no idea. I'm gonna give the team a bad name. I'm gonna do more damage than good. And it's like Jesus saying, it's never been about you. It's not. I'll provide the fish. Yes. Failures are the only people God has ever used.
It's all God has to work with.
It's all God has to work with.
And what's interesting is, and Jesus knows things about us that we don't even necessarily know about ourselves yet. I just thought of something this morning that I've never thought about right in this conversation, which was, so right after he goes on a walk with Peter, and Jesus puts his arm around Peter and says, hey, Peter, by the way, there's going to come a time when you're going to end up for me, because others are going to lead you to death. And in that moment, I want you to know you're not going to deny me. It's interesting.
Wow.
That he says, you're going to die for me. So I know you feel real about,
I never
He
thought
said other
about
people
that.
will lead you where you don't want to go, and they will dress you, because when you were a kid, you're able to dress yourself. Remember the proud kid? Hey, look, I
Yes.
can dress myself. That was Peter going, I'll go with you to prison and death. But now Jesus is saying, but there's coming a time, Peter, you will have matured and grown and developed that you will die for me. It's interesting that Peter talks so much about temptation and trial and suffering. If you look at all the
First and Second Peter.
yes,
Okay.
because he knows that suffering brings character. No, suffering brings perseverance. Perseverance brings character, and character brings hope. So this is this journey that Peter is going to literally live out. So I never thought of that before. That Jesus said, "Don't worry, there's going to come a time where you will go to death for me." And of course, that's the moment he has. Well, what about him?
Right.
Again, not necessarily Peter's best moment.
Peter can't help himself.
These profound things.
He can't help himself.
That this was, but here's the thing. Honestly, I mean, if Jesus just told me, even in a veiled way, how I was going to die poorly, I'd probably have the same thought. Well, what about Roger?
Right.
Is Roger get all scot-free? I mean, are we going to die together? Is Inglorious Pastords going to go down in a fiery crash together? Or is it just...
I'm not sure I'm comfortable with the direction our podcast suddenly just turned here.
Bottom line, Jesus said, what is that to you?
Yeah.
What is that to you? If I want him to remain until... It's just an interest, but I never thought about that before. So I sometimes, the way that I read Jesus 20 years ago, even when I was a pastor for early on, the way that I read Jesus was different. I read Jesus more with a smile on his face than ever before. Whereas before, I probably saw Jesus as much more serious, and everything was serious. And Jesus certainly had a serious side, man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. But I think he also had this incredible ability to comfort. And even like you pointed out, which I'd never thought about, in the second miraculous catch of fish, he goes toward Jesus, knowing he's a mess. I mean, he's just put it on display for all to see. And yet he knows something about Jesus 3 years in that's deeper, that's further along. I know that Jesus still loves me. I wonder if he wondered if he was going to be still in the apostle game.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wasn't intending to go here, but it just seems that, maybe the wrap up or it just struck me. Peter was a pastor.
He was.
No.
Yes, he was the original pastor.
No, because it's get your own drink.
I'll put mine
Mr.
there.
Chick-fil-A, man. I've got Polar Pop.
It's not time for sponsorship yet.
No, I'm looking at that, and I realized the beautiful thing about that term that we were drawn to, and like, thanks, Rob Abercrombie from Keller Williams, was Peter was just that. He was this screw up, right? This bastard screw up, and Jesus says, but I want you to be a pastor. Mm-hmm. And you're always going to be both. But I want you on my team. That's our story. It's why we like him. He was the original pastor.
He was the original Inglorious pastor. So that was Peter. And by the way, we need to go even
that
further.
Could be the title of our podcast could be The Original Inglorious Pastor.
It's Peter.
Peter.
We need to go further back there than Rob Abercrombie, because the first person that called us Pastords was Tim Kopinski. So shout out to Tim.
Wherever you are.
Well, he's on an island off the coast of California.
Cyprus, I think.
It's not Cyprus. It's like Catalina or something. But that was good. It has a C in it. Cyprus. You just went all...
We love you, Tim.
Bible Village.
And you have played a role in our life beyond just that name. But
the name was great.
The name was great.
It does make us laugh.
First time we were ever called Pastords.
So I think it's time we say thank you once again to our sponsors. The Rob Abercrombie team of
Keller Williams.
Oh, I'm so glad you got that right this time.
Not Keller Williams.
Keller Williams.
Because we don't want to go there. These are wonderful people. They will help you find a house and not a burial plot.
And that's going to stay with our listeners. Rob, why don't you give us some verbiage that you want us to use for the sponsorship? Because if you leave it to Roger, he's going to say buy a house, not a burial plot, which I don't think that's not great. It's kind of that's. I mean,
All right. Episode 5, signing out.
gosh. Not a real plot. I think you could use that, Rob. That,
You're going to get so many sales out of this.
okay. I'm pressing the end. Oh, yep, for sure.